You have a choice. Either silently sign the house over to my name, or I will forcibly throw you out onto the street, said Michael, my only son, looking at me with those cold eyes I no longer recognized. I silently picked up the phone and dialed a number. Hello? A voice answered on the other end. Michael instantly paled, his face lost all colour, and he was speechless. If you are watching this, please subscribe and tell me where you are from, because what I am about to tell you will change the way you see family relationships forever. I am 70 years old, and I never imagined I would end up confronting my own son in this way. But before I get to that devastating moment, I need you to understand how I got here, how a mother who gave everything ended up being threatened in her own house by the son she raised with so much love and sacrifice. This is my story, and I promise you that justice arrived in a way that none of them saw coming. My name is Rose, and for 50 years I was the devoted wife of Louis, a hard-working man who built our life brick by brick. We lived modestly but with dignity in a house that he bought with the sweat of decades of honest work. When Michael, our only son, was born, I swore that this boy would have everything we did not. Louis worked double shifts in construction while I cleaned other people's houses to pay for Michael's private school. I remember his little hands clinging to my skirt when I left him at school, his bright eyes full of innocence. He never asked for anything, but I gave him everything. Every dollar I earned went straight to his education, his clothes, his books. Louis and I ate beans so that Michael could eat turkey and mashed potatoes, an American comfort food that he loved. We wore old clothes so that he would always have a new uniform. That was our love, silent but absolute. The years flew by, and Michael grew up into a handsome and intelligent young man. He graduated with honors, went to college, and we were so proud we cried with happiness. Louis used to say that everything had been worth it, that seeing our son succeed was the greatest reward. But then she arrived. Tiffany appeared in Michael's life during his last year of college. She was a beautiful woman, I won't deny it, but there was something in her eyes that bothered me from the beginning, a calculating coldness that she hid behind perfect smiles. She came from a family with money, and from day one she made it clear that our modest home in suburban Chicago seemed insufficient to her. I remember the first time she came for Sunday dinner. She looked around with barely disguised disdain, touching the furniture as if it might contaminate her. Louis and I prepared the best meal we could afford, roast chicken with stuffing and gravy, but she barely tasted a bite, saying she was on a diet. Michael looked at her captivated, blind to her evident contempt for us. I tried to talk to him, to gently warn him that this woman did not value what truly mattered, but he got angry with me for the first time in his life. "Mum, you are being unfair to Tiffany. She is just different. That is all. Not everyone has to live like us," he said to me with a harshness that broke my heart. It was the first crack in our relationship, the first sign that I was losing my son. Louis hugged me that night while I cried in silence, promising me that Michael would once again be the loving boy we raised. But he never was. They got married 6 months later in an elegant ceremony that Tiffany organized completely. Louis and I were barely consulted. I felt like an uncomfortable guest at my own son's wedding. Tiffany wore an extremely expensive ivory dress with rhinestones that glittered under the lights, while I wore the same dark green dress I had bought years ago for another occasion. Tiffany's friends looked at me with poorly disguised pity, whispering among themselves. I heard one of them say, "Poor Michael, coming from a family like that." I swallowed my pride and smiled throughout the ceremony because I did not want to ruin my son's day. Louis squeezed my hand during the vows. We both knew we were losing Michael to a world that valued money more than love, but we never imagined to what extent. The first years of marriage, Michael still visited us occasionally. He came alone because Tiffany always had excuses: headaches, social engagements, fatigue. The truth was obvious. She did not want to set foot in our humble house. Michael began to change gradually. He talked about investments, properties, business opportunities. His job at a real estate company was going well, but it was never enough for Tiffany. "Mom, when are you planning to sell this house? It is too big for just the two of you," he suggested one day during a visit. "You could move to a smaller apartment and have extra money." Louis tensed up beside me. This house was his pride, his legacy, the result of 30 years of hard work. "Son, this house is our home. You grew up here. Our memories are here. We are not planning to sell it," Louis replied firmly. Michael did not insist that day, but I saw something in his eyes that frightened me. Greed. My son looked at our house as if it were already his, calculating its value. Then Louis got sick. It was sudden and devastating. A massive heart attack that almost gave him no time to say goodbye. He spent his last weeks in the hospital, weakening day by day while I clung to his hand, begging him not to leave me alone. Michael came to the hospital 3 times in those weeks, 3 times in a month, while his father was dying. Always in a hurry, always with urgent calls to attend to, always with Tiffany waiting for him outside because hospitals gave her anxiety. The last time Louis spoke coherently, he grabbed my hand with surprising strength and said, "Rose, do not let anyone take this house from you. It is yours. Promise me." I promised him without really understanding why he insisted so much. 2 days later, my Louis was gone forever, leaving me alone in a world that suddenly seemed too big and cold. The funeral was a blur of faces and empty words. Michael cried. I saw him cry for real, and for a moment I thought that the pain would unite us again. How wrong I was. Tiffany did not even pretend to be grieving. She wore a completely inappropriate fitted black dress for a funeral and spent the ceremony checking her phone. After the burial, when everyone left, I stayed alone in my house for the first time in 50 years. The silence was deafening. Every corner reminded me of Louis, his laughter, his voice, his presence. I cried for entire days, barely eating, barely sleeping. Michael called twice that first week, brief and uncomfortable conversations where he did not know what to say. A month passed before he came to visit me again, but this time he did not come alone. Tiffany accompanied him, and for the first time in years, she entered my house. They sat in the living room, and Michael awkwardly cleared his throat before speaking. "Mum, we need to talk about your situation. This house is too much for you alone. The expenses, the maintenance, everything. Tiffany and I have been thinking. Maybe it would be better for you to move in with us. We could sell this house, and you would have financial security for your later years." My later years. I was 70, I was not dead. But what hurt me the most was the way they said it, as if I were a burden, a problem to solve. I looked Michael directly in the eyes, searching for the boy I had raised, but I only found a calculating stranger. "Michael, this house was your father's dream. All our memories are here, your childhood, our lives. I am not going to sell it," I replied, my voice trembling but firm. Tiffany let out an exaggerated sigh of frustration and looked at Michael with that expression that clearly said, "I told you so." "Mum, be realistic. You are an older woman, alone, in a big house. What if you fall? What if you get sick? We live 40 minutes from here. We cannot be coming every time you need something. It is for your own good," Michael insisted, but I heard Tiffany's words coming out of his mouth. "I appreciate your concern, but I am perfectly fine. I have my neighbors, my friends from church. I am not alone," I said, trying to stay calm. Tiffany abruptly stood up, clearly irritated by my refusal. Michael, we have wasted enough time. Your mother is stubborn. She is not going to listen to reason. Let us go, she said, grabbing her designer purse that probably cost more than my expenses for 3 months. Michael looked at me with disappointment, as if I were the unreasonable one, and they left without even saying a proper goodbye. That was the first of many uncomfortable conversations. Michael began to visit me more frequently, but they were no longer visits from a concerned son. They were negotiations, constant pressure for me to sell the house. Every time he came, he inspected everything with critical eyes, pointing out defects, maintenance problems, expenses that, according to him, I could not sustain. Mum, the plumbing is old, the roof needs repair, the paint is peeling. How much do you think all those repairs will cost? Thousands of dollars you do not have. If you sell now, you could get good money. Any later, it will be late and the value will drop, he constantly told me, like a persistent salesperson. I resisted, but I must admit that I was beginning to feel the pressure. Louis had left the house, completely paid for, but living on the social security checks I received was increasingly difficult. Utilities were going up, food cost more, the medication for my blood pressure was not cheap. I started taking sewing jobs to earn extra money, mending neighbors' clothes until late at night. Michael discovered I was working and flew into a rage. See, Mum, this is exactly what I am talking about. A 70-year-old woman sewing until midnight because she cannot afford to keep this house. It is ridiculous. It is dangerous for your health. Sell the house and stop suffering. But I was not suffering. Working made me feel useful. It kept me busy. It prevented me from sinking into loneliness. The house was the only thing I had left of Louis, of our life together. Selling it would be betraying everything he worked for to give us. So I kept refusing. Then the strategy changed. Michael and Tiffany started coming without warning, always criticizing, always pointing out problems. Tiffany complained about the smell of dampness that, according to her, pervaded the house, even though I cleaned obsessively every day. She complained about the old furniture, the worn curtains, everything. I do not know how you can live like this, Rose. This is depressing. Michael grew up in this darkness, poor boy. Thank goodness I got him out of here, she told me one day as she ran her finger over a shelf looking for dust. She called me by my first name. She no longer even called me mother-in-law or Mrs. Rose. Just Rose, as if we were friends. Or worse, as if she had authority over me. I swallowed the insult and did not respond. Confronting Tiffany meant confronting Michael, and I still had hope that my son would return to who he was. How naive I was. Things got worse when Michael suggested that I move in with them temporarily while I decided what to do with the house. Just a few weeks, Mom, so you can see what it is like to live without worries, without having to maintain this huge house. We have a perfect guest room for you, he said with a smile that should have seemed comforting, but I found unsettling. I finally accepted, exhausted by the constant pressure, thinking that perhaps a change of scenery would help me clear my mind. I packed a small suitcase with clothes for 2 weeks and left my house with a heavy heart, looking back as if I had a premonition that something terrible was about to happen. Michael and Tiffany's house was the opposite of mine. Modern, minimalist, cold like a soulless luxury hotel. Everything was white, grey, and gleaming chrome. There were no family photographs, no memories, just expensive, empty magazine decor. The guest room was small and austere, with a single bed and a tiny closet. The first few days were tolerable. Tiffany practically ignored me, locked in her home office, working on I do not know what. Michael left early and came home late. I spent the days watching television in the living room, feeling like an intruder in a house that was not mine. I cooked occasionally, trying to be helpful, but Tiffany complained about the smells, saying her kitchen was not for preparing heavy food. After a week, Michael came to my room with papers in his hand. "Mum, I have been thinking, since you are here and you are comfortable, why don't we rent out your house? We could easily get $1,000 a month for it. That money would help you a lot, and the house would not be sitting empty, deteriorating. Rent out my house. Let strangers live where Lewis and I built our life." The idea horrified me. "No, Michael, that house is not for rent. I am going back soon. I just needed this break." His expression changed instantly. The mask of the concerned son dropped, and I saw genuine irritation. "Mum, you are being irrational. That house is falling apart empty. It is a waste. Dad would have wanted you to be practical." "Do not speak for your father. Louis wanted me to keep that house. He made me promise before he died," I replied with more firmness than I had shown in months. Michael left my room, slamming the door, and I heard raised voices from his bedroom. Tiffany was shouting something about the stubborn old woman and wasting time. That night, I decided I would return to my house the next day. It had been a mistake to come, a mistake to believe that Michael really cared about my well-being. But when I went downstairs the next morning with my suitcase, I found Michael and Tiffany waiting for me in the living room with serious expressions. "Mom, sit down. We need to have an adult conversation," Michael said with a tone I had never heard from him, authoritative and cold. Tiffany stood with her arms crossed, a satisfied smile on her intensely red, painted lips. I sat down slowly, my suitcase still in my hand, sensing that something very bad was about to happen. Michael cleared his throat and looked me directly in the eyes without a hint of warmth. "We have been very patient with you, Mom. Too patient. But enough is enough. That house is a burden for you and for us. Dad died more than 1 year ago, and you are still clinging to the past as if he were going to come back. He is not coming back. It is time for you to accept reality and sell that property," Michael said, with a coldness that chilled my blood. "Michael, we have talked about this. I am not going to sell your father's house. It is my home. It is where I plan to die when my time comes," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but I felt my hands trembling. Tiffany let out a sarcastic laugh that echoed in the room like a whip. "Your home? Rose, let us be honest. That house is worth at least $300,000 on the current market. $300,000 wasted on an old woman who cannot even maintain it properly. It is selfish of you." "Selfish? I am selfish." I stood up abruptly, my indignation overcoming my fear. "I spent 50 years sacrificing for this family. I cleaned other people's houses so Michael could have an education. I wore old clothes so he could dress well. Louis and I killed ourselves working to give him everything, and now it turns out that I am selfish for wanting to keep the only thing I have left." "The only thing you have left is us, Mum, your family. And your family is telling you that house is too much for you," Michael interrupted, also standing up, approaching me with measured steps. "You can sell it voluntarily and live your last years in peace, or you can continue to be stubborn and complicate your life. You decide." "I have already decided. I am going home right now," I said, taking my suitcase with trembling hands. I walked toward the door, but Tiffany stepped in my path with her arms crossed, and that cruel smile that I had come to hate so much. "I do not think you understand the situation, Rose. It is not a request. Michael is your only son, your only heir. That house will eventually belong to him, so why not make things easier for him now? Think of it as your last gift to the son you love so much," Tiffany said, with a sickly sweet tone that concealed pure poison. "Get out of my way," I demanded with all the dignity I could muster. Tiffany looked at Michael for instructions, and he nodded slightly. She stepped aside, but as I passed her, I heard her venomous whisper, "This is not over, old woman." I took a taxi back to my house using the few dollars I had saved in my purse. Throughout the ride, I cried in silence. The taxi driver had the decency not to ask questions. When I arrived home, the house felt different, as if it too had been betrayed. I locked myself in and did not answer Michael's calls for 3 days. But on the fourth day, he showed up without warning. He knocked insistently until I opened, tired of hearing the doorbell. He entered without waiting for an invitation, looking around as if evaluating a property for sale, which I suppose was exactly what he was doing. "Mom, I am sorry if Tiffany was hard on you. You know how she is. Direct. But she is right. This house is falling apart, and you cannot maintain it. Look at this," he said, pointing to a damp stain on the ceiling that had appeared after the last rains. "This is going to cost thousands of dollars to repair. Where are you going to get that money? Are you going to sew dresses until you are 80 years old?" "If necessary, yes," I replied with a stubbornness I did not know I still possessed. Michael sighed dramatically, as if I were a difficult child who would not listen to reason. "All right, Mum. If you want to live like this, go ahead, but do not expect me to be coming every time something breaks or you need help." "I have enough responsibilities as it is," he said, heading toward the door. Before leaving, he turned around with an expression I could not decipher. "Dad would be disappointed to see you like this, clinging to material things when you could be enjoying life." Using Louis against me was the lowest blow. When Michael left, I collapsed on the sofa and cried until I had no more tears left. My son, the boy I had raised with so much love, had turned into a cruel stranger who only saw my house as a bank account. But I would resist. For Louis, for myself, for the dignity I still had left. The following weeks were the loneliest of my life. Michael did not call or visit again. It was as if he had erased me from his life for not doing what he wanted. My neighbors invited me for coffee. The ladies from church included me in their activities, but nothing filled the void left by my son's absence. 2 months after our last fight, Michael showed up again. This time he did not come alone. Tiffany accompanied him, and both had serious expressions that immediately put me on alert. They sat down in my living room without being invited, Tiffany wrinkling her nose at the old furniture as she always did. "Mum, we have come to make you a final offer. A very generous offer considering your situation," Michael began, taking some papers out of his briefcase. "Tiffany and I have decided to buy your house. We will give you $200,000, which is a fair price considering the condition it is in. With that money, you can buy a small, comfortable apartment, and you will have money left over to live your final years peacefully." $200,000, when he himself had said it was worth $300,000. They wanted to scam me, and on top of that make it look like a favor. "It is not for sale, Michael, and I definitely would not sell it to you for $100,000 less than it is worth." Tiffany stood up abruptly, her patience clearly exhausted. "You know what, Rose? I am tired of this. You are a stubborn, selfish, ungrateful old woman. Michael has offered you help again and again, and you reject him as if he were the enemy. That house is going to be ours, one way or another. We can do this the easy way or the hard way." "Are you threatening me in my own house?" I asked incredulously, looking at Michael, expecting him to defend his mother. But he just looked at the floor, cowardly until the end. "It is not a threat. It is a promise. Michael is your only heir. When you die, which could be tomorrow considering your age, this house will be his anyway. Why do not we save everyone the drama and you hand it over now? That way at least you will see some money before you die," Tiffany said, with a malicious smile that made me understand that this woman was truly evil. "Get out of my house, now!" Both of you, I ordered with a voice I did not recognize, full of fury and pain. Michael finally looked up, and for a second I saw something like shame in his eyes, but it was only a second. All right, Mum, we are leaving, but think carefully. This is your last chance to do this civilly, Michael said, as Tiffany was already walking toward the door, her heels clicking loudly against the hardwood floor as if to make her contempt clear. When they left, I locked the door and slid down to the floor, my back against the wood, crying uncontrollably. My son had threatened me. My own son wished I would die soon so he could take my house. The pain was unbearable, physical, as if my heart had been ripped from my chest. That night I could not sleep. Every noise scared me, every shadow seemed threatening. Tiffany's words echoed in my mind, one way or another. What did that mean? How far were they capable of going? I did not have to wait long to find out. A week later, the strange problems began. First, it was the water. I arrived home after church and discovered that there was no pressure, barely a thin trickle coming out of the faucets. I called the water company and they informed me that someone had reported a leak and had temporarily shut off the supply. But I had not reported any leak, nor was there such a problem. It must be a mistake, Mum. Someone called from this address 2 days ago. We will have to send an inspector and that will take at least a week, they told me with bureaucratic indifference. A week without proper water, having to carry buckets from my neighbour's house. At my 70 years old, going up and down stairs with heavy buckets. Then it was the electricity. An astronomical bill arrived, 4 times more than normal, $500 that I definitely did not have. When I called to complain, they told me that the meter showed a very high consumption, as if I had all the appliances on day and night. Impossible. I turned everything off religiously to save. If you do not pay in 3 days, we will proceed to cut off the service, Ma'am, they warned me with a mechanical tone. I had to use the savings I had hidden for emergencies, money I had been saving penny by penny for years. It vanished in an instant to pay a bill I did not understand. Then I understood. They were not coincidences. Someone was sabotaging my life, making living in my own house a nightmare. And there were only 2 people with a motive to do so. Michael knew all the details of my house. He had grown up here. He knew where the meter was. He knew my routines. He had a copy of the keys that I had never asked him to return. I changed the locks immediately, spending more money I did not have. The locksmith looked at me with pity when he saw my trembling hands as I paid him. "Is everything all right, Ma'am? Is someone bothering you?" he asked with genuine concern. I shook my head, too ashamed to admit that the person harassing me was my own son. But changing the locks did not stop the problems. One morning I found the backyard fence broken, as if someone had kicked it during the night. Another time, the plants I cared for so diligently appeared uprooted and thrown around the yard. Small cruelties designed to break me, to make me feel unsafe in my own home. I finally called Michael. My last hope was that maybe he did not know what Tiffany was doing. "Michael, strange things are happening at the house. I think someone is breaking in when I am not here. Could you come and check?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Too long. "Mum, maybe you are imagining things. At your age, it is normal for the mind to play tricks. Have you considered that perhaps it is not safe for you to live alone? These episodes of paranoia are common in older adults." He was calling me crazy. My own son was invalidating my reality, making me doubt myself. "I am not imagining anything, Michael. The fence is broken. The bills are altered. Someone reported false problems to the water service. This is real. Or maybe you are so stressed about maintaining that house that you are starting to see problems where there are none." This only confirms what I have been telling you. Mum, that house is too much for you. Sell it before something really bad happens, he said, with a tone that sounded almost satisfied, as if my problems validated his arguments. I hung up feeling more alone than ever. I had no one to turn to, no one who would believe me. My neighbours were kind, but old like me, unable to truly help. The police would laugh if I told them my son was psychologically harassing me to steal my house. I had no proof, just a series of incidents that could seem like simple coincidences. The nights became terrifying. Every creak of the house made me jump. Every shadow seemed like a threat. I slept with a chair wedged against my bedroom door, a kitchen knife under my pillow. This was no way to live, but I preferred that to giving up. A month after changing the locks, Michael and Tiffany appeared again. This time they did not knock. They were simply on my porch when I opened the door to pick up the newspaper. I was so scared I almost screamed. "Good morning, Mum. I see you changed the locks. Interesting decision considering I am your son," Michael said with an accusatory tone, as if I had committed some unforgivable offence. "I have the right to change the locks on my own house," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. Tiffany looked at me with those calculating eyes, evaluating me like a predator evaluates its prey. "Of course you do. It is your house. For now," Tiffany said with emphasis on the last two words. "But we have come to inform you of something important. We have hired an appraiser. This house needs urgent structural repairs, or it could be considered uninhabitable. The roof, the plumbing, the electricity, everything is in dangerous condition." "That is a lie. This house is perfectly fine," I protested, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Michael pulled more papers from his eternal briefcase. "We have the report here. The inspector found multiple code violations. You could be fined or even forced to abandon the property if you do not make the repairs. We are talking about at least $50,000 in repairs." $50,000. He might as well have said $1 million. I did not have that amount, not even a fraction, and they knew it perfectly well. "You hired an inspector without my permission. How did you get onto my property?" "We did not need to enter. Mum, the problems are visible from the outside. The inspector did his work from the street, all completely legal," Michael lied without batting an eye. But I knew it was a lie. No one could see the condition of the plumbing or the electricity from the street. Tiffany approached, her expensive perfume mixing with my fear. "Look, Rose, enough with the games. You know you cannot fix this house. You know you cannot maintain it. You know it will eventually be ours. Why prolong the inevitable? Sign the sales papers, take the money, and end this torture for everyone." "Never," I whispered, but my determination was beginning to break under the constant weight of their harassment. I was exhausted, scared, completely alone against two people who clearly had no moral limits. Michael sighed dramatically. "All right, Mum, if that is what you want. But when the fines from the city come, when they force you to leave the house because it is uninhabitable, do not say we did not warn you. And by then, the price we offer will be much lower. Every day that passes, this property is worth less," he continued. They left, leaving me trembling on the porch. I went inside and locked the door, sliding down to the floor again. They were winning. I could feel it. Little by little, they were breaking me, stealing my peace, my safety, my sanity. It was only a matter of time before I completely surrendered. That night, sitting in the darkness of my living room to save electricity, I touched the photograph of Louis that I kept on the end table. "Forgive me, my love. I do not know if I can continue to keep my promise. I am so tired, so alone. What do I do?" As if Louis had heard me from wherever he was, Something made me remember. There was a box in the attic, Louis's things that I had never checked after his death. Documents, papers, memories that were too painful for me to face. But now, desperate, I decided to search. I went up to the attic with difficulty. Every step was a challenge for my arthritic knees. The flickering light barely illuminated the dusty space full of old boxes and abandoned memories. I searched through the shadows until I found the wooden box that Louis had jealously guarded for years. He always told me it contained important papers, but he never let me see them. "Someday you will need them, Rose. When I am gone, open this box," he had told me months before he died. I carefully carried the heavy box downstairs, almost stumbling on the stairs. I placed it on the dining table and opened it with trembling hands. Inside were meticulously organized folders, typical of Louis, who was always orderly with documents. I started checking the house deed, old receipts, birth certificates. Nothing seemed relevant until I found a yellowed envelope with my name written in Louis's handwriting. I opened it with a racing heart and took out a letter. I immediately recognized his careful calligraphy, each letter formed with the precision of a man who left everything in order before leaving. "My dearest Rose," it began. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. "If you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you, and you are probably facing problems with our house. I know our son better than he thinks. I have seen how he has changed since he married that woman. I have noticed how he looks at our property with greedy eyes. That is why I took precautions that I never mentioned to you, because I did not want to worry you while I was still alive." My breathing quickened as I continued reading. Louis explained that 2 years before he died, he had transferred the house to an irrevocable trust. The property was no longer directly in my name, or his. It was protected in a legal structure that Michael could not touch, manipulate, or automatically inherit. I was the lifetime beneficiary with the right to live there until my death, but no one could force me to sell. "Also," the letter continued, "I have been saving money in accounts that Michael does not know about. It is not a fortune, but it is enough for you to live with dignity. I also have 2 small properties that I rented out for years without telling you because I wanted to surprise you on our 50th wedding anniversary. That day never came, but now those properties are yours. Everything is documented in this box." I continued reading through my tears, discovering secret after secret that my humble Louis had kept. He had been more astute than anyone imagined. "If Michael is causing you problems, contact the lawyer Francis Herrera. He is an old friend of mine who knows the whole situation. His number is at the end of this letter. He has specific instructions to protect you and ensure that no one abuses you. Trust him as you trusted me." The name Francis Herrera was clearly written next to a phone number. There was also an additional note. "I have prepaid his services for 10 years. It will not cost you a penny. Just call him and he will know what to do." I frantically checked the rest of the box. There were the trust documents, the deeds to 2 small apartments in popular areas of the city, bank statements showing savings of almost $80,000 distributed in different accounts, and rental contracts that generated $1,500 a month. Louis had left me protected. He had anticipated exactly this situation. "Why did you not tell me, Louis? Why did you keep all this a secret?" I whispered to my husband's photograph, although deep down I understood. Louis knew me. He knew I would have insisted on sharing this information with Michael, trusting in the goodness of our son. Louis saw what I did not want to see, that our son had become someone capable of betraying his own mother. With trembling hands, I dialed Francis Herrera's number. It was almost 8 o'clock, but Louis had written that I could call any time. The phone rang 3 times before a professional but friendly voice answered. "Herrera and Associates, Francis Herrera speaking. Mr. Herrera, my name is Rose. I am Luis's widow. I found your number in a letter my husband left me, I said, my voice broken with emotion. There was a brief silence. Then I heard a deep sigh. Mrs. Rose, finally. I have been waiting for your call for over a year. Louis warned me that it would probably take time before you checked that box. Are you having problems with your son, Michael? The direct way he asked took my breath away. Louis had told him everything. Yes, he and his wife are pressuring me to sell the house. They have been sabotaging my life, scaring me, threatening me. I do not know what else to do. Do not do anything else, Mum. I will come to your house first thing tomorrow morning. Bring all the documents you found. We are going to solve this once and for all. Michael and his wife are going to discover that messing with you was the biggest mistake of their lives, Francis said, with a firmness that made me feel protected for the first time in months. That night, I slept better than I had slept in a year. I knew that Louis, even after death, was still looking out for me. He had been my guardian angel, anticipating the danger and leaving me the tools to defend myself. Michael and Tiffany thought they were harassing a defenseless old woman, but they were very wrong. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Francis Herrera knocked on my door. He was a man of about 60 years old, impeccably groomed grey hair, an immaculate dark suit, and a professional leather briefcase. His eyes conveyed competence and something else, indignation at injustice. Mrs. Rose, it is an honor to finally meet you. Louis spoke of you constantly. I am very sorry that we are meeting under these circumstances, he said, shaking my hand with genuine warmth. I invited him in and prepared coffee, while he meticulously reviewed every document in the box. This is pure gold, he murmured as he read. Louis was brilliant. This trust is completely airtight. Your son has absolutely no claim on this property as long as you live. And even after your death, the trust has specific instructions that Michael will have to comply with if he wants to see a single cent. What kind of instructions? I asked, curious. Francis smiled in a way that made me feel like Louis had left one last surprise. If Michael behaves, respects his memory, and treats you with dignity until the end of your days, then he will receive a modest inheritance. But if there is any evidence of mistreatment, manipulation, or abuse toward you, everything is donated to charity organizations. Louis made it very clear that he would prefer his money to help strangers rather than reward a cruel son, Francis said. I burst out laughing for the first time in months. My Louis had thought of everything. But there is more, Francis continued. The threats, the harassment, the problems you have been experiencing, all of that constitutes elder abuse. It is a serious crime. With your testimony and any evidence you can gather, we could file criminal charges against your son and your daughter-in-law. Criminal charges? Against Michael? The idea terrified and relieved me simultaneously. Part of me was still the mother who wanted to protect her son, but another part, the wounded and betrayed part, wanted justice. You do not have to decide now. First, we are going to confront them with the legal reality of the situation. We are going to make it very clear to them that you are not alone or defenseless. I have full authorization from Louis to represent you and protect your interests. Believe me, when they understand that a lawyer is involved and that their whole strategy has been useless, they will back down quickly. We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail. Francis documented every incident of harassment I recounted, took photographs of the broken fence and the destroyed plants, copied the altered bills. He explained my rights and the legal options available. For the first time since Louis's death, I did not feel alone. Now, Mrs. Rose, I suggest we call your son and invite him to come over. It is time for Michael and Tiffany to know the truth, Francis said, closing his notebook with satisfaction. I picked up the phone with hands that no longer trembled. I dialed Michael's number and he answered on the third ring with an impatient voice. Mum, what is it now? I am busy. Michael, I need you to come to the house. It is urgent. Bring Tiffany too, I said with a calm that surprised even myself. Francis nodded in approval from his seat. Urgent? Did you finally decide to be reasonable about the house? He asked with a hopeful tone that turned my stomach. He still thought he had won, that he had completely broken me. Come and you will find out. I will expect you in an hour, I replied, and hung up before he could ask more questions. Francis smiled contentedly. Perfect. Now prepare yourself, Mrs. Rose. What is about to happen will be emotionally difficult, but it is necessary. Your son needs to understand that his actions have consequences, Francis said, arranging documents on the dining table like a general preparing his battle strategy. The hour passed slowly. Francis and I reviewed the plan. He would speak first, establishing the legal facts coldly. I just needed to stand firm and not allow myself to be emotionally manipulated. If he cries or tries to play the victim, do not give in. Remember everything they have done to you, Francis warned me. Exactly 60 minutes later, I heard Michael's car park outside. I looked out the window and saw them get out, Michael with a worried expression, Tiffany with her perpetual look of annoyance. They walked to the door and Michael knocked softly. I opened without saying a word and let them in. They immediately noticed Francis sitting in the living room surrounded by documents. Michael's expression changed from worry to confusion to alarm in a matter of seconds. Mum, who is he? What is going on here? Michael asked, looking between Francis and me with growing nervousness. Tiffany, always more cunning, had already identified the lawyer's briefcase, and her face paled slightly. Sit down, I ordered, pointing to the sofa. For the first time in months, my voice sounded authoritative in my own house. Michael obeyed automatically, years of upbringing overcoming his current arrogance. Tiffany followed reluctantly, her calculating eyes assessing the situation. Francis stood up and extended his hand professionally. Francis Herrera, attorney for Mrs. Rose. A pleasure to finally meet you, although I would have preferred it to be under better circumstances. Michael did not shake his hand. He just stood there, jaw dropped. Lawyer? Mum, you hired a lawyer. What do you need a lawyer for? I did not hire him. Your father did before he died. Francis has been my legal representative for over a year. I just did not know it until last night, I explained, secretly enjoying the look of growing panic on Michael's face. Tiffany leaned forward, her voice sharp as ever. I do not understand what a lawyer has to do with anything. This is a private family matter. Francis let out a short, humorless laugh. It stopped being a private matter when you started harassing, threatening, and sabotaging my client. But before we get to that, there are certain legal facts that you need to understand. He took the first document from the pile and placed it in front of Michael and Tiffany. This is the deed to the property we are sitting in. As you can see, it is not directly in Mrs. Rose's name. It is in an irrevocable trust established by your father 3 years ago. Do you know what irrevocable means, Michael? Michael took the document with trembling hands, his eyes scanning the pages, not really understanding what he was seeing. This cannot be real. Dad never mentioned any trust. Your father was a very intelligent man who anticipated exactly this situation. The trust protects this property from any claim, forced sale, or manipulation. Mrs. Rose has a lifetime right of occupancy. No one, absolutely no one, can force her to sell or transfer this property. Not even she herself can sell it without the approval of the trustee, which is me, incidentally, Francis explained with professional satisfaction. Tiffany snatched the document from Michael's hands, reading frantically. Her face turned from pale to red with fury. This is absurd. There must be a way to break this trust. Louis was sick when he signed it. He clearly was not of sound mind. Be careful what you say, Ma'am. I have complete medical statements proving that Louis was perfectly lucid when he established the trust. Any attempt to challenge it will be useless and costly. Believe me, this trust was designed by the best estate planning lawyers. It is absolutely airtight, Francis replied in an icy tone. Michael sank into the sofa, reality hitting him like a sledgehammer. His whole plan, all the months of harassment and manipulation, completely useless. The house was never really within his reach. But that is not all, Francis continued, pulling out more documents. It turns out that your father also owned 2 additional properties that you were unaware of. Rented apartments that generate steady monthly income, in addition to bank accounts with substantial savings. Everything protected, everything out of your reach. That is impossible. Dad was a construction worker. He did not have that kind of money, Michael exclaimed, standing up, his denial transforming into desperation. Your father worked hard for 50 years and was extremely careful with his money. Unlike you, he understood the value of saving and planning. He also understood, sadly, that his son had changed and he needed to protect his wife from your greed, Francis said, without softening his words. I remained seated in silence, watching Michael's arrogance crumble. It was painful to see my son like this, but also liberating. He finally understood that he could not manipulate me anymore. Tiffany turned to me with barely contained fury. This is your fault, Rose. You poisoned Louis against us. You put ideas in his head that we wanted to steal from you. None of this would have happened if you had been reasonable from the start. Enough. Francis's voice resonated in the room with authority. Do not dare to blame my client for your own greed. I have extensive documentation of everything you have done to Mrs. Rose over the past year. The threats, the sabotage, the psychological manipulation, everything constitutes elder abuse, which is a federal crime with very serious consequences. Michael looked up abruptly. Crime? We did not do anything illegal. We just wanted to help Mum. Help her. Francis let out a bitter laugh. Reporting false emergencies to the water service, tampering with the electric meter to inflate the bills, destroying property, hiring a fake inspector to intimidate her with non-existent repairs. You call that help? We do not have proof of any of that, Tiffany said quickly, but her voice betrayed nervousness. Francis pulled out a thick folder. I have reports of all the false calls tracked. I have dated photographs of the damaged property. I have testimonies from neighbours who saw you lurking around the house at odd hours, and I have the recordings of your threats. Recordings? What recordings? Michael completely paled. Then he remembered, the last time they came, when Tiffany said those cruel words. I had left my phone on the table, seemingly forgotten, but Francis had instructed me that morning to record any interaction. The recordings where Mrs. Tiffany threatens my client, saying they will get the house one way or another, where she suggests that Mrs. Rose's death would be convenient for you. Where they admit to having hired that fake inspector, Francis said, playing fragments on his tablet. Michael and Tiffany's voices filled the room, their cruel and incriminating words impossible to deny. Michael buried his face in his hands. Tiffany stared intently at Francis with pure hatred. What do you want? Tiffany finally asked, her pragmatism overcoming her pride. Money, a settlement. Everyone has a price. What we want is very simple, Francis replied, closing his tablet. You are going to leave Mrs. Rose completely alone. No more calls, no more uninvited visits, no more threats of any kind. You are going to disappear from her life unless she, of her own free will, decides to contact you. And you are going to sign a legal document acknowledging that you have no claim on this property, either now or in the future. Michael lifted his head, his eyes red and teary. Mum, please, you cannot do this. I am your son. We made mistakes, I admit it, but we do not deserve this. Dad would not have wanted you to punish us like this, he said. For the first time in months, I really looked at my son. I saw the man he had become, weak, manipulative, controlled by his greedy wife. But I also saw glimpses of the boy he had been, and my heart broke again. Your father did exactly what he had to do to protect me. Michael, he saw what I did not want to see until it was too late. So what? Are you going to sue us? Are you going to put your own son in jail? He asked in a broken voice, trying to awaken my maternal instinct. Francis intervened before I could answer. That depends entirely on you. If you sign the document, commit to leaving Mrs. Rose alone, and cause no further trouble, then this ends here. But if you refuse, or if you bother her again in any way, I will file criminal charges immediately. I have enough evidence to secure convictions that include jail time. Tiffany stood up abruptly. This is extortion. You are using legal threats to force us to give up our rights. No judge would accept this. Call it what you want, ma'am, but I assure you that any judge will see exactly what it is. An abusive son and his manipulative wife harassing a 70-year-old woman to steal her house. The media would also love this story. I can see the headlines. Real estate executive harasses his own elderly mother. How do you think that would affect your career, Michael? Michael winced at the mention of his job. He was a manager at a prestigious real estate firm where reputation was everything. A scandal like that would destroy him professionally. Tiffany understood it too. I watched as she quickly calculated the consequences. Let us see that document, Tiffany demanded, holding out her hand. Francis handed her several stapled papers. She read quickly, her lips pressing tighter with each paragraph. This says we renounce any future inheritance, that we are not entitled to anything when Rose dies. Correct. The trust has very specific instructions. If there is evidence of mistreatment, abuse, or manipulation toward Mrs. Rose, the entire inheritance is donated to charity organizations. This document simply formalizes what is already reality. You destroyed your relationship with her, and the consequences are that you will not receive a reward for your cruelty, Francis explained without emotion. Michael looked at me with genuine desperation. Mum, are you really going to do this? Are you going to leave me with nothing? I am your only son. Dad would have wanted me to inherit something. Your father wanted you to behave like a decent son. He wanted you to love and respect me, not threaten and terrorize me in my own house. You had every opportunity in the world to be the man he raised you to be, but you chose to be this, I said, pointing to the documents that proved his cruelty. Tears were now flowing freely down Michael's face. I am sorry, Mum. I am so sorry. Tiffany was right. We needed money. We have huge debts. I thought if we got the house, we could sell it and solve everything. But I never wanted to hurt you. I swear. Finally, the truth came out. It was not just greed. They were financially desperate, probably living far beyond their means, pretending a lifestyle they could not afford. My house represented their financial salvation, no matter what it cost me. Bad financial decisions do not justify abuse. Michael, there are 1,000 ways you could have handled your problems without destroying your own mother, Francis said sternly. Tiffany dropped the papers on the table in a rage. Fine. We will sign your stupid document. But this is not over, Rose. We will make sure you spend your last years completely alone. No grandchild will ever know their grandmother. You will die without family, with no one to remember you, she said. Her words were like daggers, designed to cause maximum pain. And they worked. The idea of dying alone, without knowing possible grandchildren, was terrifying. But Francis stood up immediately, confronting Tiffany. That threat has also just been recorded. Intentional familial alienation. I can add that to the lawsuit if you want. Keep talking, Mom. Every word digs you deeper, he warned in an icy voice. Michael grabbed Tiffany's arm. Shut up. You have done enough damage. He turned to Francis, defeated. We will sign. Give me the document. Francis placed the pages in front of them, with 2 pens. Michael signed first, his hand trembling so much that the signature was barely legible. Tiffany signed with furious strokes, practically tearing the paper with the force of her writing. Francis collected the documents, reviewed them carefully, and put them in his briefcase. Perfect. Now listen to me very carefully, both of you. From this moment on, you are not allowed to contact Mrs. Rose in any way. No calls, no visits, no messages through third parties. If she wants to talk to you, she will initiate the contact. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Tiffany spat out, standing up and walking toward the door. Michael stayed for a moment longer, looking at me with pleading eyes. Mum, I really am sorry. I know you do not believe me, but I love you. I have always loved you. I just got lost along the way, he whispered in a broken voice. Part of me wanted to hug him, tell him everything would be fine, that I forgave him. But the stronger part, the part that had been betrayed and terrorized for months, stood firm. If you really loved me, Michael, you never would have allowed things to go this far. Your father loved you unconditionally, and it broke his heart to see who you became. Now go, I said. Michael nodded in defeat and walked toward the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. If you ever change your mind, if you give me another chance, I swear I will be better. I swear I will be the son you deserved. I did not answer. I just watched as he left, closing the door behind him. I heard his car start and drive away, and then silence filled my house. But this time it was not a terrifying silence. It was peace. Francis approached and placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, Mrs. Rose. You were incredibly brave. I burst into tears then, all the stress and pain of the last months coming out in uncontrollable sobs. Francis let me cry, without rushing, without judgment. When I finally calmed down, he offered me a tissue and sat across from me. And now what? I asked, my voice hoarse from crying. What do I do with my life now that my only son is dead to me? Now you live, Mrs. Rose. You live the life that Louis wanted for you. You have financial security, you have your house, you have your freedom. And as for being alone, that is not true. I have instructions from Louis to check in on you regularly to see how you are doing. Furthermore, Louis established a fund so you can travel, pursue hobbies, do what you always wanted to do but could not due to lack of resources. He pulled more documents from his briefcase. There was an additional letter from Louis that I had not seen in the box. Francis handed it to me with a gentle smile. Louis asked me to give you this only after the situation with Michael was resolved. I opened the letter with trembling hands. My beloved Rose, it began. If you are reading this, it means Francis has already confronted Michael and you are safe. I know it hurts. I know your heart is broken. But I need you to understand something. You did not fail as a mother. We did everything right. Sometimes children simply choose paths we cannot control. But your life does not end because Michael chose poorly. You have so much left to live for. I have left enough money for you to do everything you always dreamed of. Visit Paris as you always wanted. Take painting classes. Join groups at your church. Make new friends. Live, my love. Live for both of us now that I cannot be there. And if Michael ever truly changes, if he becomes the man we raised, you will know in your heart whether to give him another chance. But never settle for less than the respect you deserve. I love you eternally, Louis. I cried again, but these tears were different. They were tears of gratitude, of love, of relief. Louis had protected me even from the grave. The days following the confrontation were strange. My house felt different, lighter, as if a dark weight had finally been lifted. Francis kept his word and visited me regularly, helping me understand all the finances Louis had organized. It turned out that my financial situation was much better than I ever imagined. The apartments Louis bought 15 years ago are now worth triple. The rents generate $1,500 a month after expenses. Added to your social security and savings, you have more than $3,000 a month in income. That is more than enough to live comfortably, Francis explained, as we reviewed bank statements at my dining table. $3,000 a month. Never in my life had I had that amount available. Louis and I always lived on just enough, saving every penny for Michael. And now, ironically, I had abundance precisely because Michael had shown his true nature. Louis also established a special fund of $50,000 specifically for you to use on things that bring you joy. Travel, hobbies, whatever your heart desires. He wanted you to finally live for yourself, Francis continued with a warm smile. Guilt immediately washed over me. I cannot spend that money on myself. It feels wrong, selfish. I should save it for emergencies. Francis looked at me firmly. Mrs. Rose, with all due respect, that mentality is exactly what Louis wanted you to overcome. You spent 70 years living for others. First for Louis, then for Michael. It is time to live for yourself. Those were Louis's exact words. He made me promise that I would make sure you spent that money on your happiness. His words made me cry again. I cried a lot lately, but they were no longer tears of fear or pain. They were tears of liberation, of grief for lost time, of gratitude for Louis's love that continued to protect me. 2 weeks passed without news from Michael or Tiffany. The silence was unsettling at first, after months of constant harassment, but gradually I got used to it. My neighbors noticed the change in me. Rose, you look different, younger, happier, my neighbor Grace told me while we had coffee in her garden. I told her everything. I could not keep the secret. Grace listened with her mouth open, occasionally interrupting with exclamations of indignation. That Michael! And I always thought he was a good son. Thank goodness Louis protected you. That man loved you madly, Rose. It was liberating to share my story. Grace connected me with other women in the neighborhood, and soon I found myself surrounded by true friends who supported me. I started going out more, participating in church activities, living instead of just existing. A month after the confrontation, Francis called me with news. Mrs. Rose, I need to inform you of something. Michael and Tiffany are facing serious problems. Apparently, they had debts with dangerous people. Illegal loan sharks. The financial pressure was real, although that does not excuse their behavior toward you. Are they in danger? I asked, and I hated myself for still worrying. Francis sighed. Honestly, yes, but there is more. Michael lost his job. The company found out about certain unethical behaviors in his dealings with clients. Apparently, this is not the first case where he has tried to manipulate older people to sell properties. He was fired, and there are ongoing investigations. My heart sank. Despite everything, he was still my son. What is going to happen to him? That is up to him, ma'am. He can face his problems honestly or continue digging his own grave. But I thought you should know in case he tries to contact you again. He is likely to come looking for financial help now that he is desperate. Francis was right. 3 days later, my phone rang at midnight. It was Michael. I hesitated before answering, but finally did. Mum. His voice sounded broken, desperate. Mum, I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I am in serious trouble. I lost my job. Tiffany left me. I have people looking for me because of debts. I have nowhere to go. I have no one else. Every word was a dagger in my maternal heart. I wanted to help him immediately, invite him home, give him money, solve his problems. But I remembered Louis's words. Never settle for less than the respect you deserve. Michael, I am sorry to hear you are going through difficult times, but the consequences of your actions are not my responsibility. You had opportunities to do things right, and you chose the easy, dishonest path, I replied with a trembling but firm voice. Mum, please. They could kill me. These guys do not play around. I need $20,000 to pay them. I know Dad left you money. Please, I am your son. You cannot let me die, he pleaded through sobs. $20,000. A fortune that I had, but that had been earned with Louis's sweat and sacrifice. Did Tiffany really leave you? I asked, avoiding his request. Yes. As soon as I lost my job, she packed her things and left. She said she did not marry me to be poor. She used me. Mum, you were right about her from the start. I was an idiot, he admitted bitterly. Yes, you were an idiot, but not for marrying Tiffany. You were an idiot for allowing her to turn you into someone capable of threatening and terrorizing his own mother. Tiffany did not force you to do those things, Michael. You chose to do them, I said without softening my words. Silence on the other side. Then I heard his shaky breathing. You are right. It is all my fault. I have destroyed everything Dad built. I have destroyed our relationship. I have destroyed my life. Maybe it is better if those guys find me. At least that way, everything would end. His suicidal tone scared me. I called Francis immediately after hanging up. He contacted the authorities and made sure Michael was located and placed under temporary supervision. I did not do it for Michael, I told myself. I did it because Louis would not have wanted his son to die, no matter what he had done. Francis visited me the next day. Michael is physically fine. He is in a temporary shelter, and there are organizations helping him with his debt problems. I also got him an appointment with a therapist. He needs serious professional help, Mrs. Rose, not only for his current problems, but to understand why he made the choices he made. Should I help him financially? I asked, still conflicted between my maternal instinct and my need to protect myself. Francis looked at me with understanding. That decision is entirely yours, but I will tell you what Louis told me when we established the trust. If Michael is ever truly remorseful, truly changed, Rose will know it in her heart. But real change takes time and effort. It cannot be bought with money. If you give him money before he really changes, you will only enable him to continue down the same destructive path. Wise words from a wise man. I decided to follow Louis's advice. I would not give Michael money, but I would pay for his therapy and make sure he had a safe place to stay while he sorted out his problems. Help, yes. Rescue, no. The following months were a transformation for both of us. Michael began intensive therapy and slowly started working on his problems. He got a humble job at a hardware store, earning a fraction of what he earned before. But it was honest work. I, for my part, began to truly live for the first time in decades. I took painting classes at the community centre. It turned out I had a talent for art that I had never explored. I joined a church travel group and visited places I had only seen on television. I made genuine friends who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. 6 months after the confrontation, Michael wrote me a letter. I did not expect it, but Francis delivered it after checking it first. "Dear Mum," it began, "I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know words cannot erase the harm I caused you. But I need you to know that I finally understand. I understand the sacrifice you and Dad made for me. I understand that your house was not just a property. It was the symbol of everything Dad worked to give us. I understand that when I threatened you, I betrayed all the love you gave me. I am in therapy, working on myself. I am not asking you for anything. I just want you to know that I am trying to become the man Dad raised, the man you deserved as a son. With love and eternal regret, Michael." I cried when I read the letter. Michael's letter remained on my nightstand for weeks. I reread it every night before bed, looking for signs of genuine sincerity or hidden manipulation. After so much pain, it was difficult to trust again. But something in his words sounded different this time. He was not asking for anything, not demanding anything. He was just expressing remorse. Francis visited me 3 months later with more news. Michael has been attending therapy religiously. His therapist contacted me with his permission to inform you that he is making real progress. He has also started attending Debtors Anonymous meetings and is working on a plan to pay off his debts honestly, even if it takes him years. Did he mention anything about me? I asked, hating myself for wanting to know. He talks about you constantly in therapy, I was told, about the remorse he feels, about how he finally understands what he lost. But he is not demanding to see you or pushing for reconciliation. He is focused on changing for himself, not to get something from you. That, Mrs. Rose, is a sign of genuine change, Francis explained with a soft smile. The words gave me hope, but also fear. What if I forgave him and he hurt me again? I talked to my group of friends about this. Grace was direct as always. "Rose, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. You can forgive Michael and still maintain firm boundaries. If he has truly changed, he will respect those boundaries." I decided to write to Michael. "Michael, I received your letter. I see that you are making efforts to change, and that gives me hope. But you need to understand that the trust you destroyed is not rebuilt with pretty words. It is rebuilt with consistent actions over a long period. I am not ready to see you yet, but if you continue on this path of genuine change, maybe someday we can rebuild something. Mum." Francis delivered the letter personally. Michael cried when he received it, he told me afterward. Months turned into a year. Michael continued his therapy, kept his humble job, slowly paid off his debts. He sent me occasional letters, never asking for anything, just updating me on his progress. Meanwhile, my life flourished in ways I never imagined. I painted a picture that was selected for a local exhibition. I traveled to 5 different states with my church group. I did volunteer work at a center helping older adults who were victims of family abuse, sharing my story to help others. It was at that center that I met Nancy, a 65-year-old woman going through a similar situation with her daughter. I helped her contact legal resources. I supported her emotionally. Seeing her regain her power showed me how much I had grown myself. I decided to formalize my help work. With Francis's guidance, I used part of the fund Lewis had left to establish a small foundation dedicated to helping older adults who were victims of family abuse. The Lewis and Rose Foundation, I called it, honoring the man who protected me even after his death. The foundation started modestly, helping 3 or 4 people a month with free legal advice and emotional support. Francis donated his time as a volunteer lawyer. In 6 months, we had helped more than 50 families. The local press asked to interview me. I told my story without shame, hiding nothing. I talked about Michael, about the abuse I suffered, about how Louis protected me, about my recovery. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people contacted me sharing similar stories, asking for help. Michael saw the interview. He wrote me another letter, this one more emotional. "Mum, I read your interview. Seeing my name associated with your pain was devastating, but necessary. I am incredibly proud of what you have built with the foundation. Dad would be proud too. Someday, if you allow me, I would like to volunteer at the foundation, only if you want to, when you want to." That letter was different. There was no self-pity or manipulation, just genuine recognition of his responsibility and respect for my boundaries. After 18 months and consulting with my therapist, I decided to give him a chance. I asked Francis to organize a meeting in his office, neutral territory. On the day of the meeting, Michael looked different. He had lost weight, looked tired, but his eyes showed genuine humility. "Hello, Mum. Thank you for seeing me. I know I do not deserve it," he said softly, respecting my space. "You have 5 minutes to talk," I said firmly. Michael nodded, tears in his eyes. "There are no excuses for what I did. I betrayed you in the worst possible way. I used your love against you. I made you feel unsafe in your own home, and all for money, to maintain an empty lifestyle that did not even make me happy. I have spent 18 months trying to become someone worthy of the name I bear. I do not expect forgiveness. I only hope that someday you can see something other than the monster who hurt you," he said. Silence filled the room. Finally, I spoke. "Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. Michael, I will never forget the terror I felt, but I also see that you are doing the difficult work of truly changing. I will give you a chance, but with strict conditions. You will continue your therapy. We will meet once a month in neutral places with Francis present, and if you ever cross the line again, it will be permanent, completely." "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for giving me a chance I do not deserve," he said in a broken voice. We met monthly for the following months. Slowly, conversation by conversation, I began to see the man my son could be. Michael never asked for money or access to my house. He only asked for time with me. A year later, Michael showed me something special. He had written a book about his experience. The Son Who Lost Everything. All the money from the sales would go to the Louis and Rose Foundation. The book became an unexpected success. The foundation received massive donations, allowing us to help hundreds more families. Now, sitting in my living room, surrounded by my paintings and photographs from my trips, I reflect on these last 3 years. I lost my son as I knew him, but I gained something more valuable. I gained myself. I found my voice, my strength, my purpose. Michael and I have a new relationship now, built on mutual respect. He has earned my respect again through years of consistent actions. And although the scars remain, I have learned that healing does not mean forgetting. It means choosing to move forward without allowing the past to define your future. Louis would be proud of the foundation, of how I defended our house, of how I became the strong woman I always was, but never knew I could be. And to you who have heard my story, I want to ask you, have you ever faced family betrayal? Tell me in the comments. Your story matters. Remember, it is never too late to stand up for yourself, to demand the respect you deserve. As Lewis taught me, true love never asks you to betray your dignity. And if I could overcome this at my 70 years old, you can too. Justice sometimes takes a long time, but when it comes, it is sweet.